Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
You're watching a Fact TV presentation of the Town of Rockingham Select Board Meeting.
It is 6 o'clock, we're close enough there too. We are, it's Tuesday, September 19th, 2023, it's 6 p.m. We are located in the Rockingham Lower Town Hall. There is a Zoom meeting connection there that you can get onto. Also, you can call in. There's a phone number there. It's all posted, all that information can be posted off, gotten off the rockingham.org website. And you can download the agenda and things that are on there. So that being said, I'd like to call this meeting to order. First business is to approve the minutes of August 15th, 2023. They're in your packet. Take a motion.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes of August 15th, 2023. Any additions, corrections, deletions, omissions?
I have a correction. It lists me as vice chair, but that's Elijah.
Pardon?
It lists me as vice chair, but that's Elijah.
What do you mean? Would you advocate?
No, we voted him in the first day.
Okay. So we
Take
get that
away his
corrected.
role.
We'll get that corrected. Anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Additions to the agenda or for routine administrative matters and or pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting. I have none, Scott.
Just one thing, I had one request from one of the folks that had an illegal burn. She's been in touch and she wanted to propose an option to the board in lieu of paying her $680 worth of accrued charges if we would accept a donation. So maybe you could add that to the agenda. We could have a conversation. Since Kevin's here, maybe he could give us a little bit of background. We can have a conversation.
Do you want to add it to this agenda, or you want to wait until next month?
Well, at some point, we're gonna file liens, so we can certainly hold off, but it's up to you. We're gonna do it at the.
What's the board's pleasure? You want to talk about it tonight?
Let's get it done.
Sure.
Okay, so we'll add it to, as number 10.
Yes.
Right,
I'd like to talk about the Oak Hill Cemetery Chapel briefly.
we can do that under other business.
Other business, good.
That way we won't have to add a, just go on action, we're just gonna discuss.
We're gonna discuss it.
Anybody else? Okay. Moving on, public comment on items that are not on the agenda. 3 minutes per person. Hearing and seeing none, move right along to the manager's report.
So got quite a few items since we last spoke, so I'll start with one that I think Sue and I think Peter have been involved with, but I'm not sure the rest of the board. There was some work that was done in and around the river by the railroad after the most recent storm event. Sue had sent an email, asked to check into it to make sure that A&R, the appropriate agencies were at least informed. So after a fairly significant amount of time, somebody finally did get back to us last week and said that they were aware of some work. They came out and looked at the work, but they didn't think that they really had any authority to do anything since the railroad basically was exempt from their jurisdiction, and they recommended if we wanted to look into it any further, that we forward it to Vermont Rail or to the Army Corps of Engineers. So at this point, I just wanted to see what the board's pleasure is, if you want to pursue this, at least question farther up the chain to figure out. There is a significant amount of material that has been moved, and again, I'm not a drainage expert, but it certainly looks like they created a channel that would potentially, during a flood event, create more, a more rapid rise of the water that, again, without me being a true engineer, but it certainly did look like they changed some of the river course there for sure.
Yeah, they certainly did. I mean, there's probably at least 8 feet high piled stone and gravel on the bank that is the floodplain, the old river bed from the 1800s. And any high water, it always went there. So there would be a wide, I don't know, 60, 70 feet wide river at that point. And it's now down to a channel that's probably as wide as this room, maybe a little bit wider. They deepened it and then they piled it all up. The A&R guy, I sent photos before and after to show how wide it was when the flood was going through. And it's, their point was to keep the water away from the railroad tracks, but it looks to me like it's just gonna force it there because they now have a narrower channel for the water to go through. And we've already had, those two neighbors have flooded twice, in Irene and this last storm. And we've just removed, with that work, and they removed a bunch of, part of the floodplain. So they're gonna probably flood earlier because they don't have that big space that used to be there with the old riverbed for the water to go into. It would have been, I mean, if they did move the gravel out of the river, if they had removed it all and trucked it away, we wouldn't be having this issue, but it's piled high. About, I don't know, 100 feet long, 8 feet tall, and maybe 30 feet wide. I mean, it's a huge pile of rock gravel.
Yeah, it's hard for them to get the perspective from the picture. You really need to see it more to appreciate how
It's
much area
huge.
was disturbed.
And I don't think it's really solved the problem, honestly. I think it's made it worse.
It's probably gonna create a problem for the people on the other side. Isn't the water gonna bounce over to that side now?
Yeah, I mean, they reinforced that bank with a lot of stone, but it's just gonna push it all there. The other problem is because, which I don't think they realize, is because unless you're there, this is right off my property, so I know it very well. The river used to flow kind of straight along the railroad tracks. And then since Irene, it dumped a lot of gravel and stone to the right, if you're looking south. And so now the river hugs sort of my side of the riverbank, takes a 90-degree turn and shoots this way and then goes this way south. So it does this jog because they did not remove any of the gravel that was built up here. That's not there right away, so they couldn't touch it. So it's just shooting water at an angle towards the bank that they're trying to protect. So I don't think they went in with anyone who knew what they were doing when they just decided to dig up the channel. I mean, the thing is, what's gonna happen the next big storm, that's all gonna be pushed south. That gravel's not gonna stay there. It came from Irene, so it's just gonna keep going down the river. And then it'll pile up in front of the Barnstable Covered Bridge.
Yeah.
So A&R's response was, okay, that's, that they're not really gonna argue with God, so to speak, the railroad, because.
It was
probably
there
not
right
gonna
away.
Get anywhere.
Certainly, we have some options. Like I said, we can pursue and try to get more folks out there and maybe get somebody that might be able to at least mitigate some of it. It's definitely a disturbance. I don't understand what they're trying to accomplish, and maybe if somebody could explain it, we could at least understand it, maybe not really appreciate it, but at least try to understand it, because what's there now, I don't understand what it's supposed to do.
I didn't either.
So,
It really narrowed that channel.
Has anybody talked to the railroad about it?
they're on the list of folks that we can try to get a field meeting with, and I'll try. Certainly, we can try to keep pursuing it.
Sounds pretty concerning.
So,
Yeah,
I mean,
especially
I've
for the
seen-
bridge, but also the two neighbors who they've lost a good bit of the floodplain and protecting their houses.
Yeah, and I've seen what happens with that, some of the flooding that happened, during Irene, was caused by that kind of, misguided, disturbance and modification previously. And then after Irene, we saw a lot of that kind of thing going on. And, again, we saw the, clear consequences of it. It can really make something that would have been pretty unnoticeable, really, like the floodwaters, once they receded, wouldn't have had a lot of damage, but sometimes that kind of excavation can cause really big issues.
So Scott, if you pursue it, can you contact the railroad directly?
yeah, so I'll try to keep working and keep the board in the loop wherever. I'll try to get them out there for a field visit, because quite frankly, we need to be out there to try to understand what they were trying to do and what they think it's going to do, and then sort of try to decide from there what other action we might want to pursue.
And it's really sped up that water as it goes through that section.
Mm.
So, I mean, they dug out quite a bit. They made a gigantic excavator in there, and big ledge came out. I mean, they were they dug out a ton of that. So it's deeper, much deeper, a great swimming hole. But
Yes.
All right, so we'll pursue it with them, and once we try to get a date established here, we'll let everybody know, so. That's sort of where that one stands at the moment, not, I guess, to be continued. A couple of bridge updates, just in case anybody's interested, you can go online now if you want and, put in a public comment on the updated 25 to 34 10-year master plan for New Hampshire DOT. They have not taken our bridge off the plan, but they did move it back a year. So now they're talking about construction in the Vilas Bridge for 2029 and completing construction in 2031. But the funding is still in place and the total project is still funded. So I guess it's one of those things, we're going to be under bridge construction once we start with the depot pretty much continuously for the next decade. So to be continued. We will reapply with the Bridge Street Bridge. If you guys remember, we did apply for the V-Trans program. It was called the VPS P2 program. We were not funded in the first round. I did speak to Colin last night. We had another meeting. He said that they would potentially be putting something again out for that program again this fall, potentially for 24 or 25. He wasn't sure yet. So if they do, we'll try to put it on and see if it could be considered in that cycle. So you try to fit all this work somewhat in a reasonable fashion, but I'll keep you in the loop as that goes forward.
What's the condition of that? This is the bridge by the post office, right?
It's got a weight restriction currently. It does go through periodic inspections. The last inspection report pretty much showed what you would expect. There's more deterioration and major structural rehabilitation and repairs. So that's why it's been restricted. So.
We can have a real problem with the timing of that, right?
Oh, yeah.
All of it's a problem.
Gets better, we go through more new things.
No, it could definitely be a problem.
Yeah, I feel like that one's gonna drag out a long time, potentially.
We're pushing our depot bridge project now out, so we're not starting any of that work till April 26th. And then that's at least 3-year, 2 to 3 year construction, depending upon how they ultimately bid that project. So we should be seeing a significant amount of bridge work. And utility work on Canal Street will probably start in 25. That's still the plan, but the actual bridge work won't start until 26. So they'll start burying utilities, cutting up the street, and doing all that, starting sometime in 25.
We can't be in a situation where there's no access to the island.
It's going to be interesting. The timing of all this is going to be interesting.
Oh, my God.
And the thing is, you got one thing right after the other, because once you get started on Bridge Street, the Depot Street Bridge,
Right.
that gets done, then they're gonna be disrupting the other bridge that's currently there, plus doing the pedestrian bridge. Then they're gonna be moving on to Bridge Street, right shortly after that, Vilas Bridge is gonna get going, so hopefully, it's gonna be
a lot of disruption, a lot of,
it's gonna be a madhouse at the post office when I start on that bridge, because you're not probably gonna be able to get down there to park anywhere near there. So that's gonna cause major issues.
As long as Depot Street is done.
yes,
shouldn't
we're
be too
still,
much of a
right, at this point, I think the good news is nothing has been defunded, so to speak, but it's still a bit of a concern because all of these projects keep getting spread out, so.
Scott, the walk by committee is very concerned about what kind of pedestrian and bicycle access there'll be on the Vilas Bridge. So we as citizens can go on to New Hampshire, even though we're not New Hampshire residents,
Absolutely.
we can go on that website and make our pitch for, they're rebuilt, is the plan to rebuild it in a historic fashion or replace it with something new?
They haven't done any of the engineering work. That won't start until 26, right? So they really haven't even given us an indication as to what they're actually going to do.
Okay.
Given its historic design and the nature of that bridge, my guess is it'll be done somewhat as close to that as they can, but I wouldn't guarantee it at this point. So.
Thanks.
Speaking of other historic structures that have been discussed, we are going to be looking at phasing the work at the Meeting House and Walter and we've been doing interviews, trying to come up with an owner's rep, and then some other engineers and architects to help us with the first phase of the work, Gary as well. We're pushing this to try to get this bid award out in January and talking with some of the folks in that world. It's going to be difficult to get the kind of people we want to get to work on that project. If we wait much past January to award that work, because those guys all bid up their work, and quite frankly, their calendars are pretty much booked up. So we're gonna try to fast track some of that bid package this fall, get that first round out, at least get the first phase under construction by the spring and summer of next year. And then we'll have to be working on the phase 2 work pretty much simultaneously with designing that, coming up with a program and funding package for that, because that's still not fully funded, if you remember the conversations from before. So we'll have to come up with all that as we go through the budget. And really the reason I'm sort of getting into that long explanation now is because the goal is to try to have all of that done and have a rededication of the building roughly for July 4th of 2026. So that's somewhat of a goal for, you know, a rededication of all the work that could be done. So we're hopeful to meet that schedule, but it's aggressive. And it's something we'll have to keep an eye on as we try to meet all these schedules.
Scott, can you remind us, is the lifting up of the building and the replacing the granite
Lifting is
foundation?
in the first phase, the windows will come out and be restored in the first phase, and then there's also a separate grant for roof repair that Walter's writing and trying to get that done as well for the fall. It would also then be part of that work as well. So pretty significant work. You know, obviously you can't, you know, anytime you raise a timber frame building of that age, there's always a concern. So you're gonna really have to make sure that we have a highly qualified, outstanding bond on whoever does that work. So God forbid they drop it, we can fix it. Yeah, I'm not gonna wood, that doesn't happen, but you know, unfortunately, with old buildings, strange things can happen. So anyway, that's gonna be a lot of work. But you'll see a lot of this that goes through the fall, so I just want to give you a heads up on that. The last thing is I am working with a group in the state to do Vermont Regional Emergency Medical Services. This is perfect, the state of Vermont, you guys are on this committee. The Vermont Regional Emergency Medical Services Coordination Study of 2023, which is a lot of verbiage to basically say, we think that we have a problem with EMS in Vermont, and we're trying to figure out what we might be able to recommend for solutions that we can recommend up to Montpelier. So maybe there could be some action at a state level to help address some of the concerns that we've certainly had here, not only locally, but also regionally. And so I am one of the members of the committee. There's a host of mostly Zoom, but other public meetings and other things. There's going to be a full study release and a full set of recommendations. So I'll certainly keep the board in the loop. It's a good thing for us to participate in since we're really being directly impacted by this. But it is something that I think, I'm hopeful anyway, will give us some good opportunities to maybe work with the state on some solutions. Because right now, you know, we're certainly caught up in a lot of concerns about the way EMS is being delivered and the future of EMS as we go forward. So we're working with that group as well.
Do you want to update the board on the issue with the railroad station that you mentioned to me, that's a railroad issue and the lease signatures and?
Yeah, again, you know, I throw poor Gary into all of these little cauldrons of disaster and then come out with, okay, now what? So that's been 5 agencies that we're trying to work through to satisfy. And you can imagine it's been frustrating, exasperating to say the least. But with that being said, we think we do potentially have a way forward that we might be able to get all of their concerns completed and be able to at least get a lease in front of the board, hopefully in November. I think that's, at this point, we've made enough progress to feel pretty good about that. And the reason that's important is it kicks off a whole host of other grants and cleanups and other, you know, we have a whole funding stack that it impacts. So we're really pushing this to a decision point, because if it stretches much past that and gets into next year, then you start worrying about, are we going to get past our ARPA funding limits and into other problems? So we're pushing this, hoping for a conclusion, but it's been very frustrating to get all the parties to alleviate all their concerns and get this lease in front of the board so you guys can approve it, so you can go forward and schedule a purchase. So feel pretty good right now. We think we have a way forward after a whole host of, again, lots of Zoom meetings, lots of emails, lots of back and forth, and I think we finally came up with a way that we might be able to get this thing done. So,
Who are all the parties?
all right, we have Vermont Rail System, we have the Green Mountain Railroad, we have the
Genesee, Wyoming, New England Central Railroad, which has the Amtrak platform, which is the Department of Justice has been pushing on that it was scheduled for last year. It's out of compliance with ADA. So they're pressuring V-Trans and Amtrak on it. And so there's issues with them and what they'll allow for the station. And they have some signal sighting issues.
because they're giving us money northern borders, so we have to complete a NEPA process for that, so there's been a whole host of issues around NEPA.
Oh my God.
We
Right,
got
so-
Brownsfields, because it has a Brownsfield, so we're dealing with the state of Vermont on Brownsfield's concerns. And I think that's what, 7 agencies, so that's about right. So, and they all have rules and regulations, and amazingly, they don't play well with others, so it's something.
So HUD was funding a $500,000 piece with block grants, and their NEPA process, it turned out, they would have required environmental work on the 8-acre rail yard. And so V-Trans said, that'll kill the project. We have 3 active freight railroads there. You can't do that. Can't shut that down. So that was a 3 to 5 month delay reversal.
Is that lease that we're trying to get signed with the railroad gonna have a right of way for that road that's going through the park down there? Not that the town not to have a right of way down there for that road is ridiculous. Because they can just decide to close it. The railroad has control of that. They can just say, yeah, we're closing the road off and the bridge goes
Which
to nowhere.
road?
He's talking about the off alignment bridge and the road that will go through the park and then connect up to the front of the station and then up to Island Street.
So the Depot Street right of way, they did survey and create that. So that was another 3-month delay, but that's done.
I believe, Peter, that's been resolved. I think we're okay.
I think all those pieces, we're at the end of them. There's as many as they are.
I know the last time we talked about it, was something about a difference in a 99-year lease versus a 30-year lease or something.
Those pieces are resolved.
And the final thing is they're doing a signal project on top of all that other work we described. So we've got the platform work, and the beauty of this conversation is they say, here's where the existing signal is. But we're not going to tell you exactly where we're going to put the new one because we don't know. So you'll have to wait until we place it there, and then you can decide whether or not you have enough sight distance on the new rail platform and the new rail shed roof to see if it's all good. So it's really something to go through this. So it's not from a lack of effort. It's just one detail after another, and it's mind numbing in terms of how ridiculous it can become. But we're close to the end, so we haven't given up hope.
Okay.
So that was that. So on that note, yeah, on that note.
Yeah, right, yeah. Any questions for Scott?
I've got one. Scott, how's the fire department efficiency tracking study coming along? Is that later on the agenda, or is that?
No, we didn't put it on. We're gonna talk a little bit about it at the tri-board meeting. I know that Kevin's here and I don't know what he wants to contribute to the conversation, but there's a lot of work that goes into the first phase, into the data collection portion, and it's a lot. So I know Sean's been working on some of it. We had our finance folks working on some of it. I know Kevin's done a tremendous amount in the last week or two to get some of his Rockingham materials in there. I don't think we're fully submitted, but we're getting closer on the data portion. And then hopefully once that's in, then they'll give us a schedule of they need to come out and do some site visit and then come up with that first draft report. And so until we get the data in, they can't really give you the next, all the phases of where we're gonna be.
Has the Saxons River Department contributed their data yet?
We've been working with Art and some of their folks, and Sean's been working with them to get it in, and I think we got a pretty good handle on what their stuff is. As much as we can get in at this point.
Thanks.
Yep,
Okay, you all set?
I think that was it.
All right, let's move on to the agenda then. The first item is the appointment to Rockingham Library Board of Trustees. There is a memo in the packet from Ian Graham, who's sitting over there. So it's one of the current staff is resigning from her position. And another fellow, Mike Stola, has decided to step up. We didn't get a lot of interest in that, but it's moved at this point.
Okay.
So we need a motion to appoint Mike Sola to the library board.
I move that we appoint Mike Sola to the Rockingham Free Public Library Board.
Is there a second? Motion made and seconded to appoint Mike Sola to the library board of trustees. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor would say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item is the consideration of 2024 Vermont Historic Preservation Grant for the Rockingham Meeting House.
So this is a, Walter again was working on, this is a updated, so it's not part of our Save America's Treasures grant application, which, you know, there's a separate grant and then we have the local match for. This is really for him to try to get some additional work done. I think the two things that are important is you can use our 2025 Meeting House maintenance funds to cover the local match portion of this. So by the time it's awarded, when the work actually begins, we'll be into that portion of the budget. So that would not necessarily require any additional funding from the board at this point. He does have roughly, this is mostly for roof related work. So doing some damaged slate, resecuring some of the slate, doing some of the flashing, doing some of the sheathing, and then doing some rain diverters and other just updates where it's needed. So our share of that would be roughly 11,800 if we get the full 23,600 that we're requesting.
And when would this work commence?
We'd have to coordinate that with the first phase of the meeting house once the lifting. So really have to talk to the architect to see when that would make sense to do it. My guess would be they're gonna tell you to lift the building, do the foundation, put the building back down, and then finish the roof, and then put the windows back in. But I think, so we'll coordinate that with the architect.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you need action to have this signed by someone?
I believe what they want from you is that they just want a resolution of support. There was not specific language, but they want to make sure that you're authorizing our use of the local match. Because that's the one piece that you have to be able to tell them, yes, it was on an agenda and we did agree. That we did.
You don't see a formal,
There's not a formal one, but
Think
that's the
so.
only thing that we have to do.
okay, what's
We're
the
gonna
match?
do a resolution on the floor.
The match is
11,800,
Is it 11,006,
11,800,
11,800?
yes.
We need a motion to approve the resolution and commit $11,800 to the study.
So moved.
Second. Motion made and seconded to approve the application for the grant and to commit $11,800. And where would that be coming from? Do we know?
That's the annual appropriation, we take the 12,000,
Okay.
so that's the,
Motion made and seconded to approve the application. Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 3 is the adopt Rockingham Meeting House General Use Policy. It is in your packet.
you guys saw a copy of this back in August when we met up in the dark. So, thought we'd bring it back to you so you could see it in the light, and nothing has been substantially changed from from the draft that you saw earlier, what we're asking is that there's just a town approval so that we can publish this, and then people that want to rent the facility, there's certainly fees involved, as well as a lot of items that are required for somebody to make sure that they don't do anything to damage the property or to unnecessarily create a problem. So that's point, this point, we're just asking you just to adopt the general use policies and rules as you have to see in the current draft.
Okay, we will need a motion to adopt the Rockingham Meeting House General Use Policy.
I move to approve the Rockingham Meeting House General Use Policy.
We hear a second.
A second.
Motion made and seconded to adopt the Rockingham Meeting House General Use Policy. And it looks like all the board has to sign this. So,
Yeah, it does have, I have one
Do you
signature.
have one there? Okay.
Yes.
All those in favor of the motion would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. And it's coming around for signature, so while that's happening on, let's go to item 4, consideration municipal planning grant, Westminster Rockingham for bike pedestrian master plan. There is a information packet in your packet.
Yes. So
Hopefully
just
everybody read it.
little background. So there was a previous review of this request through the planning board. And so you will see that the Deb Wright for the planning commission had signed, that they had at least gone through and also had been informed of this as well as supported it. There's a lot of discussion about to do this as a combination with Westminster, or to do it as an individual request just for the town. Gary and I have been talking with the funders. If we are awarded the grant for the combined, and then we turn around and find out down the road, Westminster is not going to participate or doesn't want to participate, or there's some other reason, we certainly don't have to do it as a combined. My understanding is we could then just do it as individual applications.
So we can do that, but then we lose the opportunity for the planning grant for the cultural plan with Brattleboro and Wilmington. So this program generally allows one grant per municipality per year. But because they have the consortium grants with multiple towns, we did ask them for a ruling if they would allow 2 for us if they were both consortium grants and we were the lead with only one of them and we were subordinate on the other, and they said yes, and one of them is the next one in your packet. It is pretty important to do the Westminster one. The walk bike one is our priority, and as Scott said, we did find a way to do it if Westminster doesn't, but their town plan and recreational, historical, and cultural resources has the overriding policy to support this, and they have a specific item on page 38 to support walking, biking trails, and so we think there's a high probability they'll sign on with us for this.
Would it be helpful for us to, or anyone, the representative from this board, to again speak with the Westminster board?
Yes, although the first step is the Westminster Planning Commission. So the second Monday in October, I will be there, and it certainly would be helpful for a select board member as well. If their planning commission approves it, then it's way likely that the select board will as well.
I'd be glad to attend that meeting with you.
The other thing according to the minutes from the Westminster, I've read their minutes and what's established here. They're only committing to a letter of support. They're not committing any funding.
So
We're talking $5,000.
Yep, and so the first level for that is the planning commission approving it, which second Monday in October, we're going to go. So the same form that you have signed by the chair of our planning commission, we're going to request the chair of their planning commission. So that letter of support is kind of our threshold issue. It's the Route 121 corridor is really important to us, and they had to authorize the town to include that. So they did show support for that. The next level for us is to get their planning commission to sign on, and then the select board, just as we've done here in Rockingham. So you're right, at this point, that those pieces still have to happen.
If we apply just by ourselves, how much would our match be versus, is it like $1,900 versus 5,000? But what is the difference?
So the match for a consortium grant, it's a $50,000 grant, and there's 10% match, so $5,000, regardless of how many municipalities are sharing in it. The individual grants are somewhere in the $20,000 range. Again, a 10% match. Yeah.
So we're looking at anywhere between 2 and 5, depending on whether Westminster joins or not.
Yes, although if it is the 5, ideally Westminster would share in the cost, they'd be sharing in the benefits.
And I see the planning commission's already signed this.
Yeah, they approved the both grants applications.
So I guess we need a motion. There is a recommended motion down there at the bottom of the page, and it looks like the rest of the body will have to sign it. Or the board will have to sign them.
So this is just for a plan, it's not for doing any work or anything, it's
Right.
just to come up with a
Planning
plan.
grant. See what's feasible, how much money it might cost if we want to go whole hog or no hog or part hog, you know.
Half of it.
Ham hocks or not, you know.
They're very comprehensive plans. They include looking at walking connectivity of sidewalks, they look at safety of intersections, they look at connectivity between neighborhoods and parts of town, so like between Bellas Falls and Saxons River, trails through woods, the Riverfront Park trails continuing. It's very thorough. They have a huge amount of public engagement. And Rick spoke with the consultants that did the Brattleboro one. It's an incredible amount of work and incredibly useful plan, more than most, frankly, even though all the plans can help lead to implementation. They're pretty practiced at.
So they actually come here and look
Yeah.
at the situation.
Oh, yeah, you should see, I can send you a sample of what they did for Brattleboro.
Yeah, let's see it.
It also helps prioritize, like, the town only has so much money they want to spend on the walk bike question. These guys will say, you get the most bang for the buck with this project and you should delay that project. So that's really worthwhile.
Okay.
It's interesting that 121 goes all the way to Grafton, and having ridden that myself and up over the hill to Chester and back down 103, it's amazing we haven't approached Grafton to go in on this soon. It's all level from Cambridgeport out to Grafton. It's a level road, it's not a bad, it's a nice road, I mean, it's narrow, like all 121.
The question with Westminster, that separates our two population centers, you know, Saxons River and Bellas Falls. That chunk through Westminster pretty much divides our town. So it's really important, I think, to get that.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, no, good point.
just curious, like, you know,
So they do look at connectivities with other towns and trails, so the walk bike safety plan for Westminster and Rockingham will look at connectivity to Grafton and Chester, to other trails, and we'll look at connectivity to Westminster and onto other trails, whether it's the Monadnock Regional Rail Trail Collaborative, connections with those trails, or Westminster onto Brattleboro, if there's any potential for connectivity there. Those will be included, even though those towns aren't participating.
all right, somebody wants to read that motion, we can move this along.
I move that we authorize the FY 24 municipal resolution for municipal planning grant jointly with the town of Wilmington and Brattleboro. Is that the right motion?
No.
No, sorry, one was the second. Oh, here you go. Okay.
You got the wrong.
Yep, sorry, that was the
Look at
next, that was the
one,
next
we
one.
got the-
I moved to authorize the FY 24 municipal resolution for municipal planning grant with Rockingham as the lead applicant jointly with the town of Westminster for up to $50,000 project and 10% match up to $5,000.
Second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the recommended motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And you have a copy there, Scott, or you want me to heck use this one?
I have some clean copies
I have
here.
one.
Let me take it.
I got the one that Deb signed, so
Bring it up, well,
you want that
get
one?
it started.
The other one that she signed?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
it's a-
Yeah, I got one here that's signed too, so.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to number 5, consideration of a municipal planning grant for the Wyndham County Cultural Plan.
So this is a regional plan, and the Vermont Creative Network, a lot of the counties in Vermont have them already. And these can help access funding as we're looking to assess better utilization of the lower theater. Something like a cultural plan will be really useful for the town, although a lot of the smaller organizations and creative artists, galleries, really reap the benefit of a cultural plan. Our economic development zone, federally recognized, is Bennington County and Wyndham County. And Bennington County has a county cultural plan already that they passed a couple of years ago. And so this effort was instigated by Wilmington, Brattleboro, RAMP, the Vermont Creative Network, looking as a prime area with a lot of cultural assets, and be useful to our initiatives going forward. Looking at turning the Opera House profitable, being able to have other activities here. I think the cultural plan will help achieve that goal for the town.
So the focus would be on this building, the Opera House. The focus.
Focus would be Wyndham County wide.
Oh, but our focus would be the Opera House?
No, so just referring to why it's useful for the town, like why a municipal planning grant. So directly benefits town goals and initiatives. What we're looking to do in the Opera House and the lower theater. But it does really benefit all of the smaller organizations, nonprofits, creative groups countywide. Next Stage Arts in Putney, Wild Goose Theater here, RAMP, the artists in 33 Bridge Street. Wilmington and Brattleboro both have a lot of similar organizations and artists. So the biggest benefit is to them. I was just describing direct benefits that the town will see in participating in the plan.
All right, there is a recommended motion again for someone to read, and Karen, you have a signature page, because
Yeah,
That's who has.
it's right here. I have
Sue
it.
has it.
for that one.
Yeah.
The culture
All
grant.
right,
Yeah,
I
fine.
move
Yes.
that we authorize the FY24 municipal resolution for municipal planning grant jointly with the towns of Wilmington and Brattleboro, with Brattleboro as the lead applicant for up to a $50,000 project and a 10% match, with the Rockingham contributing up to $1,667.
We'll hear a second.
That's second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the motion. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay, and the paper's coming around for signatures. Move on to 6, it's a memorandum of agreement for shared land use planning.
So we had advertised multiple spots for zoning administrators since we lost ours back in December, and had some applicants that we had brought in and done some interviews and hadn't really come to a satisfactory conclusion. In discussions with some of the other managers in the region, they were also experiencing some of the same problems. We were able to work out an interesting arrangement with 2 land use professionals that are going to both be on a contract basis and will be providing services to all 3 municipalities. The flexibility of this gives us the advantage of being able to, right now, we do have some office hours scheduled, as well as they've been supporting Gary on some of his, some of the items that he's been carrying forward since we lost our administrator. as well as trying to provide some additional support for the larger projects that are really difficult for us to get to, like the bylaws rewrites and finalizing the town plan and some of these municipal planning grants. And so usually we were able to bring some of these folks in, do some orientation, they sat with us. They've met the DRB, they've met the planning board. I think that so far the relationship seems to be working pretty well. It certainly helped free up a lot of Gary's time, and they do seem to be providing a level of service, which then I think helps us meet all of our current requirements with land use, as well as, get our major projects that have been somewhat hit or miss back on track and get them, I think, back to a point where we can get some of these wrapped up and completed. So this is an opportunity. We're going to take a look at this. The relationship isn't permanent, so we're going to take a look, and after 6 months, meet as the managers meeting, as well as meet with you guys and say, is this working? Is this not working? Do we want to continue this? How do we think this is? But I think for these kind of specialty types of positions with our challenges with recruiting, I think we're going to see more of these types of arrangements. I know Bonnie has mentioned that the Wyndham Regional and other folks are looking at regional cooperative models to see if that might assist communities that are really not being able to attract or retain or pay for the services of the professionals that they need on some of these very critical, very specific types of professional services, which are expensive for an individual town to carry. But in this case, by sharing it with 3 communities, you can spread out some of those costs of employment, as well as, I think, get a better return on investment for the time that the folks are actually spending working on our community. So
The regional will help you with developing a contract, between the different entities and the details. But in our case, we're going outside of the region here.
right.
So that's why we can't really work with you there, but that's the goal of the regional commission, to really assist with the nuts and bolts of this.
And I can, this is gonna go forward, I think, with listers, it's gonna go forward with engineering services, it's gonna go forward with all this, IT services, all the things that we're all struggling with trying to acquire at a price that we can afford.
So these are impressive resumes. These guys look really capable. And Ryan and Halima, am I pronouncing that right?
We call it
Hallie,
Holly.
she's going by Hallie.
Hallie, okay.
Yeah, I could never pronounce it right either, I was embarrassed. Yeah,
Very-
so Holly, she said on Holly it works.
So when people come in and have to fill out a zoning application, there's not a human up there. How does that work?
There's always either Megan, Gary, or myself. One of the 3 of us is usually in the building.
Okay.
So at times when Gary's not here or the people aren't physically in the office, Megan has been handling a lot of that walk-in traffic. So we've encouraged people, especially if they're coming in to ask for very specific land use questions or zoning questions. That's not a typical just pop in and let's sit down and have a chat kind of conversation. It needs some work and some research. And so we tried to ask people if they could to give us an appointment or time, or we could at least then make the time valuable for them and for us. But when people walk in, we do give them some services, and I think that's worked very well with Megan, so we'll continue to do that as well.
I'd like to congratulate and thank Gary for having handled this since last December. Oh, wow.
He's not out of it yet.
Don't give credit. Let him get off easy.
All right.
We're just spreading the burden here a little bit, but yeah, you're right, Gary's been stepping in the breach with a lot of things, and I do appreciate it, because it's a lot.
One thing, if you look at the town of Windsor letter, that says memorandum of agreement by and between the towns of Windsor, Weathersfield, and Bellas Falls. They didn't know Bellas Falls was a town. Got to change that to Rockingham.
Yeah.
It's just like,
So we'll bring you a final once it's cleaned up and
okay,
done.
so you don't need a motion to approve this? or
Not
you
tonight, I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention, get some feedback from you,
Yeah,
and
there's no
we are gonna clean it up and finalize it, but I think we're excited to see how it works too, quite frankly, because it's challenging. The people that we were getting to interview either wanted incredibly their salary demands were just not something we could meet, or they just didn't have the experiences that I thought were gonna be important for us, for the kind of land use issues that we're trying to address in our community. So this was a real opportunity for us. I'm excited to get to work.
I will say as a team, they're perfect. They each have very different strengths. Ryan has been spending Thursdays here, is the DRB person, so he'll be running the DRB meetings, and he's digging into the zoning bylaws, really a quick study, because of course they're each different, Weathersfield, Windsor, Rockingham. He wrote one of the permits from the hearing last Wednesday night. A great job. Really good digging into questions with people. So he's getting a phone from Weathersfield. People will be able to call him direct. We got him zoning@rockbf.org email. So those pieces are falling into place. And Hallie, a lot of experience with land use, is in a PhD program in sustainable land use with UVM, and spent a chunk of time today looking not only at the town plan that we're on, but she's looking at a 20-year land use plan that can help us look at a vision, and so that when we get to the next town plan in 8 years, we already have an idea of what the vision is that we need to meet in that town plan. So I think that the team is really rounding out, and we'll be in great shape by being able to add a lot of specialty skills by sharing with the other towns.
That's great. Chuck was working on a revision of the zoning laws, I thought, wasn't he?
We had a grant to do a zoning bylaws update.
What happened with that?
So that RFQ will be going out. It turned out after working through the new town plan and the zoning bylaw grant application, there's a lot more definition that we can do. So the planning commission did changed about 6 different sections in the goals and objectives at the August meeting. And so we have Hallie took those minutes, changed the RFQ to meet those goals. And so we'll have a final RFQ for them to approve next Thursday. And we'll be going through that process, 6 weeks to get consultants on board. And so,
Right. In Ridwick, he's done a lot of work on zoning as it
yes,
affects.
and Ridwick will be a
affordable
piece of
housing.
that public engagement and process. But a lot of pieces there, a lot of good teamwork.
You know, and on their resumes, you know, one specifically says they focus on, you know, smart cities and urban planning, and the other one says they focus on, you know, forestry and land use management. So that seems like a good combination.
Yeah, they have some diverse skills. So, you know, we'll definitely keep them in the loop, and we'll definitely report back at 6 months, and then as we go through the budget, if we think it's a good model, we'll make sure that we bring the board's attention to that as well as we go forward. So,
Have there been a lot of zoning applications and applications to the DRB
Yes.
recent, an uptick?
Yeah, we average 3 a month.
Mhm.
That require DRB approval.
Any new residential construction?
Yeah, there's some, yep. Those, most of those most of those are administrative review. We probably have, you know, 8 or 10 permits a month that don't have to go to the DRB. And so a single family residential owner build doesn't need to go to the DRB. Some of those have been coming through.
Okay, let's move on to item 7, which is the Vista Downtown Vibrancy Fund Letter of Attestation.
So this has already been in front of the VF board, and what it is the state of Vermont is giving downtown organizations extra funds. And so there's an additional $25,000 worth of state funding.
Sorry.
That's all right.
The signed documents are somewhere here.
Oh, I've got them.
Oh, you
Oh,
got it.
great, okay.
Yeah.
I got one here too, so. Everybody should.
Yeah, I think that's a photocopy, kind of
On the
full.
village anyway.
Well,
All right, so we'll need a motion to approve the downtown vibrancy fund letter of attestation after Scott has finished with his application.
So by approving the letter of attestation, what the board is basically saying is we're not gonna pull any of our existing funding to replace the state funding, that the state funding will be in addition to the funding that's already been committed. So that's what they're asking you to attest. And as I said, the village has already approved it, so this will be the second request.
So we need a motion then?
Yes.
What is the, I know, looking at this letter, and it says we would like to share an updated submission with the town and village. The next junk road, is that just something that was on there when it, last sentence on the,
Yes.
So
That's
that's
just
just-
something that Betsy had written on
okay,
there.
all right.
Yeah.
I didn't know if they're supposed to
No.
hold up on this until the joint board.
No,
She's got a meeting in November, and joint board's in September, so.
right.
I mean, next week. So we'll take a motion to approve this, letter of attestation.
so moved.
I'll second.
Made seconded to approve the letter of attestation, for BIFTAC. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Is the signature sheet coming around somewhere?
I have this one here.
Can I
Do you
see?
have the next one?
I have one that looks like it's got original
That's all.
signatures. That's
I
it.
got one with all the trustees.
All the
on it.
Well, I have one with the trustees and I have a blank one for
There you
you
go.
guys also.
Works for
I'll
me.
send that one around too.
That's all we need. All right, while that's coming around, let's take a gander at the proposed fall meeting schedule that is in your packet. And just pay attention to who's what and where.
So a couple things have happened. The trustees are going to have just a singular meeting in October, as well as a singular meeting in November. Doesn't work as well for this board because in November, we really get into our budgeting process. But there is an opportunity, if you wanted to have the tri-board meeting on the 26th. We would then have a select board meeting on the 10th, and then your next scheduled meeting would be the 7th of November, if that's how you wanted to go forward. And then we would obviously have two meetings in December. It's probably the same in January, as we complete the budget and articles and then get everything ready for town meeting. So,
So the question is, do we want to just have one meeting in October instead of two, basically?
yes,
That one meeting would be on the.
the 10th. The trustees are already gonna meet on the 17th of October and the 14th of November. So our meeting, the town select board would be the 10th of October, the 7th of November, and the 21st of November.
So the question becomes, when are we planning on starting our budget process?
We're gonna start presenting some of the budget materials to you on November 7th.
Okay, so you don't think we need the second meeting in October then?
I don't think so. Because you're gonna have a meeting next week, and then we're gonna have another meeting 2 weeks after that. So,
I mean, we can always throw a meeting in there if we feel like we need to.
absolutely. Yep.
Okay, is everybody happy?
I'm good with it. Seems good.
Okay, and we will go with that. Just remember that the top one is the select board. Don't confuse it with the second line, so you don't show up for
You can
everybody's
certainly
meeting.
show up.
Yeah, well, yeah.
The only question I had was, I mean, the 21st meeting would be the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. That doesn't impact people.
Right.
Travel
As
wise.
opposed to the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. It doesn't matter to me, but in fact, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving looks better for me.
I'm
Doesn't
good.
matter to me.
I don't have any plans. at this
Okay.
point, so.
No.
And as usual, if a special meeting is needed, there will be one
Always
call, so
Absolutely.
kind of leave a little time on your Tuesdays. If we have to call and try and get it on our normal scheduled Tuesday meeting date instead of calling it Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, some oddball date. Okay, let's go down to number 9, which is the financials. They're in your packet. Rick and I have already beat up Alyssa on questions, so.
I
You have more
apologize
than I
to
did.
Bonnie. She
But I
was
knew the
sent
answer
copies,
most
but
of them.
apparently.
All right,
we didn't
yeah.
get the time. meeting, so my apologies to Brian for that.
Yeah, okay. Well, I saw what Rick
Yeah.
pulled out of it, and I read all that. And I was wondering, where did he get this financials? I figured maybe he came
Well,
down.
they emailed them out finally.
Right.
I got it back and she gave me, I just came in Monday and she ran a copy off to me, but
Yeah,
Scott was gonna hand them out tonight. but-
So she answered my 7 questions.
yeah, very well.
Pretty
too.
capable, I thought, yeah.
Yeah, it's very useful to see that.
The only question, you had mentioned something in the last meeting about a tax sale, the next tax sale process?
We're still working on what's delinquent, because we're changing it to the 1 year. We're not at a substantial amount yet, so we'll see, when we do the tri-board, we'll see how much we have and see if it's still worthwhile. We want to hold it and do it in the spring. So we might not have enough to go forward and actually make it worthwhile, we'll see. So,
Or even just the bread one helps get people to pay.
It does. It needs to get the paper that I better do their good text.
right,
Scott, the question I had on the endlessly delayed solar field out there.
they've started working.
But I mean, how come we don't have any money yet?
I've emailed back and forth with them, and they were sending the check, it should be here this week. So they
All
committed to issuing the check last week, and it should be in our possession this week.
Good.
So, yes, so I was hoping it'd be here today, but it didn't come today's mail, unfortunately. But yes, I anticipate it this week.
Okay, everybody ready to move on to the next one?
Yeah.
This is, the, number 10 is a illegal burn issue with unfortunately, a neighbor of mine, that she's never quite had smoke knock on my door yet, but that's fine. There was a fire that started, she had two fires of burning grass and leaves, and one got carried away and started into the house. And it was just lucky that Larry's, wife's son was home, which was around the corner, and he was able to get up there and start putting the fire out before it really got onto the house. It was up under the clapboard from what I understand and stuff. And so she never got a permit for the burns and consequently got a bill. So I'll let Scott go from there.
So she's called me a few times. She has spoken to Larry. I don't know if Larry has spoken to Kevin or anybody else in the fire department, but she was asking for some relief from the current amount owed, which is $680. And she then said that she would make some sort of a financial award back to the volunteer fire department. She would give them some sort of a gift, but she didn't give me an amount. So she was just asking for some sort of relief from that specific. The letter we sent her was basically we were gonna put a lien on the property if she didn't pay the bill. So that's what prompted this conversation back and forth.
How many other ones? We have about 3 or 4 other ones that still haven't paid.
Well, we have a couple of larger ones.
Right.
I'd say we've probably got 5 others that are still outstanding.
Right, so if we make a deal with this person, then the other one's gonna be coming in with their hands out looking for another deal. That's my problem. I think that the bill is way less sufficient than if the house really got going and turned the whole side of the house off, because it would cost her a whole lot more than $680. I know it's negligence that caused the issue, but that really, the other issue we did have was the big fire up on Randall Hill.
Right,
yeah.
There was a policy issue there because the fire happened before we adopted the new policy rates for the charge of fire. So the bill went up with the new rates, and now it's come back and we had to resubmit another bill with the old rates. So that's the
Substantially less than the
different
first
type of
bill,
issue
right.
there with the policy issue on our part, that one got messed up, but that one's still in negotiation.
Attorneys are talking at this point. I talked to them today. They still don't have a resolution to that. So
So that
at
was
some point,
$28,000 bill that started off, and it's down to about half of that.
it's 11, I think it was 11 something.
So,
It went back
yeah.
down. So,
I don't know what the board's thing is. My indication is not,
Kevin,
My neighbor, I know she's got, the husband has some health issues and going forward, but that really shouldn't affect our decision here. I mean, she's lucky she didn't,
lose that.
caught the house, but worth more damage than was there. I mean, and granted, somebody had to go out and put it out, and I think that's, it's a legal burn, very simple call and get a permit, and then if it happened, then, yeah, that's an issue, but, still.
So I'd like to hear Kevin's take on it.
I'm with Peter. I don't want to set a precedent where we have an illegal burn. The town has committed a lot of resources and manpower. Now somebody wants to give a minor donation to make it go away.
I agree. I mean, I think people, there needs to be more education out there to let people know they have to call in for a burn permit.
One thing
There
that-
are people who don't do it, like crazy neighbors who I think still have a bill out.
Yeah. One thing that did come out of the latest fire committee meeting was that, the first of the year, we are going to put out a press release stating the policy for the illegal burn, so people hopefully won't be able to say, I didn't know anything about that, but they don't read the paper half the time anyway, but at least we'll make the attempt to get it out there, and put it in on the website, and so they can check. There's enough, there has been enough illegal burns that people should have caught on by now, they need a permit. And I know, being down there talking with Larry, we get interrupted quite a bit, people call him up asking for a permit, so. I do know that people are calling, but then there's always the guy that just goes off and does it anyway, so.
Well, I think we really need to, be very aggressive about making people understand that, because a couple of years ago, I cut down all these roses and I was gonna just burn it. And I thought, this is not a problem, like in I have a big backyard, And people kept saying, you better call somebody your neighbors. And sure enough, no, I didn't have quite enough clearance between the neighbors, Jim's garage behind my house there, And I didn't know, I was ready to go out and light the match and thinking, there's no problem with this. So I
So
think,
just think what your insurance company would have to pay if that garage caught on.
well, I know.
I mean, but that's an issue we're dealing with here, I mean,
Yeah, and people need to understand that if there
yeah,
is a call, they're gonna be financially liable.
right.
So I didn't know that. It didn't ever cross my mind, honestly.
Yeah, and the fire marshal also pays attention to weather. You may not know that there's a big windstorm coming in another
Right.
couple hours. and-
Well, that's what they told me. They said, no, you don't have enough clearance and it's gonna be windy anyway, so don't even think about it, So I just stand, in defense of people. I grew up in the country and we burned every
Oh,
week.
It's amazing when you run around town, how many people still use the burn barrels.
Yeah.
I have seen a lot of that going on, and I do tell Larry about a few of them that I've seen, and by the time he's got there, of course, it's out, but still. I had one guy came down to recycle, I don't know if we had any barrels, so he did burn stuff. I mean, that's like a red flag goes up, it's like, I'm gonna burn, but you got any barrels?
That's cute.
You can also
So anyway.
call the state for burn permit, burn barrel,
Yeah,
because that's.
right, they've
environmental.
been outlawed for a while, but
Yes.
people still do it. So,
And if
So-
someone wants to fill out a permit, that, is easily accessible on the town website.
well, generally, is it on website or just,
There is a copy on the website.
okay, so they can get one there, but Larry has to sign it.
Right.
But generally, if they call Larry, he'll give them a verbal okay to do it, but then he goes right over to his vehicle and starts writing the permit right out and make sure that it's done. And their law is stated right on the backside of that permit, I've seen them, so.
Well, I think just, like so many things, there needs to be, maybe just have a little article in the shopper.
Yeah, well, that's what we're gonna do.
Okay, something like that.
We'll get one out.
Reminding
I offered
people.
to write one off, and then the fire committee will go
Okay,
ahead
good.
with it, and then if that's the case, we'll get it in the paper,
Yeah. no, good.
so. Okay,
I got one thing. Other
Yeah, go
business. All right, so, I don't know how many of you,
we're not, you want to
Not
do
there
this other business? or not?
oh, I thought this was other business.
All
Yeah,
right,
thank you.
let's get the other business support stuff, then you can pass on.
All right.
All right, if we're all done with that one, shall we authorize or have Scott just send her a letter saying that the board has.
I'll follow up with her.
Yeah.
She's
Denied the
calling, so I'll
request
talk to her
and-
tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah.
And just
And
let her know
that
we
way they're just,
considered it and.
yeah,
and go
just
from
setting a precedent that we don't want to really get into. That's the problem.
Yep.
All right, review and approve orders, bills and warrants. Take a motion. I think everybody's seen them or,
I move that we approve orders, bills and warrants.
wait a second.
A second.
Motion made and seconded to approve orders, bills and warrants. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor would say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion's carried and they're coming around, so have fun. Agenda items for the October 10, 2023 meeting.
Yes, so there's a few things on there for our consideration. We will have the draft of the pavement management plan. We will have an update on the Depot Bridge. I'm hoping to have VHB give us an update. There are some things that we want to keep track of and make sure we're moving forward even with the delays on the bridge construction project itself. There's some things in the gravel pit and some of the closure activities in phase 4 and just some general other pit-related information that I want to share with the board at that meeting as well. So those 3 items for sure will be part of the
Are you
conversation.
gonna need a executive session for part of that? Yeah, good stuff.
Yes, potentially,
Okay.
but I'll let you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
If anyone in the room has anything they come up with, just let Scott know or get it on the agenda or me know and we'll get it on there. All right, review agenda items for the September 26, 2023 joint board meeting, board meeting. That's,
We'll update the ARPA for both the town and the village. We'll talk about, Ludwig is coming to do a presentation. I emailed today to John Dunbar to see if there was any handouts for that, so we'll make sure that that information. We'll update the fire feasibility study, the status of that. Those are things off the top of my head. I think there was 1 or 2 others I can't recall. Maybe Bonnie remembers.
Well, one thing, Rick and I want to, talk about, creating an online survey to get people's opinions on what to do about town meeting next spring.
Oh, okay.
We had already, Rick
Like
and I
a
met
Survey Monkey, or are we gonna do something else? or-
Survey Monkey, but we put together a list of questions and,
Okay,
how we want people to actually answer them and so forth, and so we'd like to share it with everybody.
great.
That's what I referenced.
Okay.
okay, now,
Okay, we have other business?
let's go to other business. Rick, you have the floor. Finally, I won't stop you.
Okay, I don't know how many of you know about the chapel up at the Oak Hill Cemetery. It has,
Where is this thing?
it's on the historic district, historic register. And it is rapidly decaying due to big holes in the roof. Water is pouring in there. And some of the interior walls are being threatened by that. The floor is gonna get rotten unless we do something about it. I know, Peter, you've had some discussions with Walter about it.
Walter and I are working on that. We've contacted Jones Brothers Roofing, who has at one point offered to do the roof, and then now it's what their latest offer is to, they'll supply the labor if the town buys materials. And as you know, labor is the more expensive part of the deal.
Right.
So they are willing, because they have a lot of families buried up there. And so, Walter's working on a grant to get the money lined up for the stuff. So once that gets done, we should move forward.
Could we throw a tarp on it just to keep it the damage? You can see the light through it, and you can see the rot. I don't want to have another 66 Atkinson Street. So we just have somebody throw a tarp on it just so the water's gushing in there. It's just such a shame to let that building get.
You see if we can tarp it. Sometimes I'm a little concerned because when you tarp it, you actually create more stress on the building.
Right.
It would certainly try.
Yeah, I think the roof seems, the roof structural members seem to be
Seems as supportive.
okay. Yeah, they seem okay. I spent a couple hours with Walter at the meeting house and at the cemetery, and this building is quite, if you can see that, but
It's kind of neat building when you look at
it really is. He took me inside. It's got quite a history, and it was restored in built in 1875, and it was or 1885. It was restored in 1990, and went on the got registered in the first place in 1991, but I just like to see this thing getting damaged every time it rains.
It is quite a contributing feature to that whole cemetery. That whole Oak Hill Cemetery is just a very nice example of a Victorian park cemetery, and have so many nice elements. The gazebo or bandstand, the soldiers monument, the gate archway, and the cemetery chapel. It's a very well put together ensemble. It's just a very nice example of that style of cemetery. It's a real asset to have.
So Walter and I also talked about all the knotweed that's growing up around the building too. It's really infringing over there. So that's another issue that we're working on, the whole thing. And we may be able to get somebody up there, throw some patches on that roof too, because it was patched at one time, but the shingles evidently came off.
You can see like.
Whoever put it up there just didn't do a very good job. So maybe we can talk to Jones Brothers again and see if they can sneak up there and throw some shingles on it.
Because Walter said he's tried to call Jones Brothers and hasn't had.
Well, I can tell you from my house, when I had that roof done, it took us a year to get there.
We're struggling to get our roof patched here too. It's not.
They're working on Plank Street right now, and I think they're going house to house down. And just in the Becky Gagnon's garage out there, then they're down the next house down, they're doing that one, so I think they're progressing down the
You're moving
street.
down the street. So maybe that's even more reason to get a tarp on there, because it could be a long time.
But I think Walter told me he called the Janswitz and Son to see if they can get up there and do something about it. I don't know how that's progressing
I
there,
don't think he's had any joy from them.
so.
Jan's
I mean, there is
repaired.
a Cement Roofing that does it too, and maybe he's not aware of them.
So if he finds someone's willing to do it, Scott, there's money to make it happen.
Okay,
Yeah, yes.
well, you will find money, depends on how much.
Yeah.
So I think if it's a patch, it can't be too much, but.
Well, don't say that. I mean, there may be underlayment, you have to strip some of that off, if there's holes in the roof, the underlayment could
We
be.
can certainly find money for materials, it's the
Compromise.
labor that's the real big.
Right,
real big.
so,
We can find ways to make sure we get materials.
Okay, so what we said, Walter can pursue Jones Brothers again.
if I catch him, I'll ask him, 'cause I know him.
Thanks.
We'll just go to Sean's house. Just go knock on his door, Sean.
Is there a relation here?
Very close families, but no relation. Might as well be though.
Name's the same, game's different.
We thought we were related for a long time.
Okay, do we need the executive session, it says requested here?
Well,
Yeah, I had requested.
Rick
one,
had asked for
just a brief one. I want to check in with our manager about how he's feeling and how things are going, and just a little, take the temperature.
and I did want to update the board on one legal action that we are currently involved
Okay,
in, so
so,
if we could do that, that would be helpful.
all right.
And one more other business, it's a small thing, I forgot to email today, but the speed sign in Bartonville, the battery must be dead or something, it's not coming up.
Okay,
I meant to email you today to let you know.
All right,
okay.
we will need someone to read this number 2, we only need one to go into evaluation, to call an evaluation.
Okay,
Then there would be no comment coming out.
all right. Executive session is a closed portion of public meetings allowed in certain circumstances, including the appointment or evaluation of a public officer or employee. The public body must make a final decision to hire or appoint an open meeting and must explain the reasons for its final decision.
Okay, we have a second? I'll second. Motion made and seconded to go into executive session. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. We are in as soon as we can lock ourselves in and
Gotta
bar
shut
the
off.
door.
This meeting was recorded by Falls Area Community Television, located at 1 Hospital Court, Bellows Falls, Vermont. If you would like a copy of the meeting, our phone number is 802-463-1613, or email us at fact810@gmail.com. Falls Area Community TV, keeping government honest.